Amen, 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 and amen. Well, are you glad you made it to church today? Yeah, amen, definitely. Well, if you have your Bibles, and I hope you do, we love our Bibles here at Sunrise, and so you can open them up to the book of James. We'll be in James in chapter 3, and we're going to pick up where we left off last week. We left off talking about the tongue and our words matter, and this week we're going to pick up in the next paragraph right after that verse, so verse 13. And if you're joining us online today, thanks for joining us on Facebook or on YouTube. We're grateful to have you. You're always welcome to tune in and always welcome to join us here at Sunrise live and in person. We'd love to have you. So I don't know if you know this or not. I think after I say it, I think you'll sense, yep, that's true. But man, we live in an era where information is readily available like that. Don't you agree? Oh my gosh, hey Siri, how long do I grill chicken? 6 minutes until the internal temperature reaches 165 degrees. 6 minutes each side. It's not rare chicken, it's 6 minutes each side. But in literally less than 2 seconds, we can have an answer to any question that we have, and information, the world of information is accessible in your pocket or your purse. It's just there. And there's a unique experience that's happened in our culture today. Because information is so easily accessible, readily accessible, less than 2 seconds, you can ask Siri, you can ask Alexa, you can ask Google, and they have everything for us that we need the moment that we need it. What's interesting is that psychologists and scientists have researched this now over it's a relatively new phenomenon, and it has created what is known as the Google effect. Now, you know what the Google effect is, you just didn't know it was a thing. What the Google effect is again, because information is so accessible and we can grab what we need the moment that we need it, it has now caused human beings to lean really hard on the accessibility of that information, and it has caused you and me to live life without remembering things. Hey Siri, remind me to pick up the dog at the groomer's today at 3 o'clock. Like, we don't have to remember those things anymore. It's actually created a veneer of intelligence and wisdom in your life and in mine because we can just know a random fact at the drop of a hat. So it's created this deal where we might know a lot of information, but are we wise? Like, are we wise people? And I know I'm asking you to self-reflect right now, and you don't want to raise your hand and go, heck no, I'm not wise at all. No, I'm not asking that, but can you reflect on your heart for just a moment and say, hey, just because I might have a couple of initials after my name or before my name, and just because I might have achieved a certain level in my life, and I might know a lot of facts, does that actually make me wise? What James is going to contend for you and for me and for us together is I think we're on a wisdom shortage. I think we're in a shortage of looking at a situation, looking at a congregation, looking at a family, looking at a business, and I think there's a wisdom shortage. Last Sunday, I was going to lunch, Joy and I did, with a family who's new to the church, and they're just kind of trying things out with us, and it was a very good conversation, and we had this talk of there's something happening in culture, in business, in the church. There is a massive wave of men and women who are retiring. And as they're retiring, not only are they, is the wall of wealth, if you're a person who is in the finances, you've heard of this, not only is there a wall of wealth that's streaming down, but there is now a wall of vacancy. There is a wave of vacancy in organizations, in churches, and in all across America, and not just America, but the world, where there is a vacancy of men and women who have stood the test, served for 40 years in their role at their job, and now there's a vacancy there, and there's nobody to fill it. And where have all the sages gone? Where's the wise counsel? And James is going to say the exact same thing. He's going to say, hey, hold on. We got to enter into this thing relationally with wisdom. We got to live church. We got to do church life. We got to do our family. We got to do business with a little thing called wisdom. One of the wisest men to ever lived put his son on his lap and told him this in the book of Proverbs. Solomon says to his son, "Get wisdom." Get it. He was the wealthiest man to ever live, and he said, don't go after wealth, don't go after possessions. Those are cool, and it's great, but he's saying, listen, the best thing you could get in your life is wisdom. He said, get insight, don't forsake her. Why? Because she'll guard you, she'll protect you. Isn't that what James said to us in James chapter 1 and verse 5 when we studied that weeks ago? He said, if any of you lacks wisdom, let him ask God, who gives it generously to all without reproach, and it will be given to him. So Solomon and James is saying, hey, chase after this thing called wisdom. She's your best friend. You want this thing called wisdom. And here's the great thing. James then says, not only should you chase it, should you get it, but here's the thing, God actually gives it. Isn't that good to know that God has the ability to give you what you're asking for? And he's saying when you ask God for wisdom, he will provide it for you. He'll shower you with it. It'll overwhelm you in your life. You can actually get it. So what we're going to see today are three things about wisdom that James is going to point us towards. And the first thing is the proof of wisdom. How many of you know that when you find proof of something, that then gives it a little bit more credibility? In a court case, if you've got a fact that proves an alibi that you were where you said you were, then that alibi is what? It's proof. It's proof. And then your testimony then can be trusted, or you're left off the hook and you can walk in freedom because the proof is in the pudding. The proof is there. It's right there. And if you want a little fun, go Google proof in the pudding, original meaning. I don't have time to walk through that. That was going to be the intro, but not anymore. So just do that on your own. It's quite interesting, actually. But there's something about proof. As a matter of fact, Judah this morning, my oldest son, third kid in the rank, they walk into the office before church started as Joy loaded in, and I bent down to give him a hug and a kiss, and I could tell what he had for breakfast. Why? Because it was all over his face. Your kids have that? If they've been into ice cream, if they had yogurt, if they've had something, the proof of their satisfaction of that, whatever it was, is all over their face. You could tell where they were. Same with wisdom. That's what James is saying, is that your life is going to have some crumbs left over it. Your life is going to be stained with the effect of godly wisdom or lack thereof. There's going to be proof in your life of wisdom or not. He says in verse 13, he gets it all out of the way in this very first question, who is wise and understanding among you? Basically, hey, where are all the wise people at? He uses this phrase "wise," and that's that is picture dirt under your fingernails wisdom. That's gritty, grimy, sweaty. Like that guy's been through the school of hard knocks and he's learned some lessons. And man, he's got tough knees because he spent most of his life in prayer. And he's just got this salt of the earth, sage wisdom guy. Anybody know a guy or a girl like that in your life? That man, that's just practical. That guy just lives out his faith, exudes Jesus. That's practical wisdom. That's that word wise. And then he says, and understanding. Now that's that intellectual piece. That's like, hey, I've got some degrees. I know some things. It's information. I've gained that. And so is James saying that wisdom is about knowing things? No, he's actually not. It's the same thing that faith isn't a faith if faith doesn't work, like and put it to work. He's saying godly wisdom isn't really godly wisdom unless it works and it gets its fingernails dirty and it gets it out of the air and onto the ground and applies it to real life. That's what wisdom is. And he's saying that's what we're searching for. Can the real wise people be seen in your context where you live your life? And so what he's saying is that godly wisdom shows up in our lives and it's unmistakable. Like you can see it. Like when you go to Subway and you go back to your office and everybody smells you and they're like, you've been to Subway. You smell like onions. That's what it is. Like every time I go to Subway and somebody from the church, you were at Subway. You've been to a barbecue place. I can smell the smoke all over you. There's that residue. He's saying in the way that is unmistakable where you've been, if you took a bite out of a garlic clove and kissed your wife, gentlemen, she knows where you've been. You've been sucking on a garlic clove. And in that same way, he's saying wisdom shows up like that. It's unmistakable. It's obvious. It's super clear. Look at how it shows up. He says in the second sentence, by his good conduct, by his is whoever, by a person's conduct, let him show his works in the meekness of wisdom. He's saying let him show his works. In other words, you look at a person's life and what they do, and it will be stained with the proof of God's practical wisdom. Here's what this looks like. When he's saying that it's going to show up in your life, what it is it's the spouse who applies, let love is patient and kind. And so what that is in that moment, you want to bite your spouse's head off. And I'm not going to ask you to raise your hand if you've ever felt that way, because I know you have. And so, but it's that moment where you apply that principle, and godly wisdom says, I'm not going to do it. I'm not going to do it. Here's one I've wrestled with all week long, and you got to know your pastor is a real person. And he struggles just like you do. And where I've struggled is in this area where I tell my kids 75,000 times to go clean their room, go to bed, whatever it might be. And I am tempted in my own heart to react to their defiance. And I'll raise my voice. I heard an amen. And I'll raise my voice and I'll get frustrated. But godly wisdom, and I'm telling you, I did not do this week. Godly wisdom is restraint. It's self-control to say, listen, they're 10. He's 5 years old. He's 6 years old. Cut him some slack. And I struggled really bad this week with that. I didn't apply that well this week. And God's word has convicted me hard, and I couldn't stand before you as an honest man if I didn't own it in front of you and say, we will mess up here. We will mess up in this a lot, but praise God for his provision. Practically, it looks like the young person or the student who willingly obeys and submits and follows their imperfect parents' leadership, while all of their friends quickly throw their parents under the bus. It's you and me putting that guard over our mouth, like we talked about last week. Got a message from somebody this week and said that I was so thrilled. I was about to say something, I'm quoting her, I was about to say something to somebody at work, and then I remembered my words matter. That right there is applying wisdom. That's what he's saying. That's the proof of godly wisdom in your life and in mine. And what's so great about this is that this kind of wisdom applied to our lives, the defining quality that it produces, the text says it's the meekness of wisdom. Everybody say meekness. Now, in their culture, in this era, when it was written specifically to the Greeks, they thought that meekness was weakness. Like if you show any sense of weakness, then you can be dominated. I can leverage that against you. And I don't think we've fallen too far from that in our culture. I think we're the same way. If you look at somebody and they seem humble of heart, if you're a cutthroat business leader, you just marginalize them all day long to get what you want. But meekness isn't really weakness, because when the New Testament church came onto the scene and Jesus turned that word upside down, he turned meekness from weakness into strength when he endured the cross for you and for me. He actually said in Matthew in chapter 11, "Take my yoke upon you and learn from me, for I am gentle and humble of heart." Same word. So the quality of godly wisdom and the residue of that, the proof of that in your life and in mine, is this godly, humble attitude. It doesn't produce arrogance, because you know that God could wipe you out in a second. But it produces this spiritual maturity of meekness, strength under control is another way to say that, of humility. Is that showing up in your life? Has that proof of wisdom popped into your world? Is it evident in your life? Can it be spotted out from a distance? I can't answer it for everybody in the room. I can only answer it for me. But is the proof of wisdom evident for you and for me? I hope it is. My encouragement is by the end of this sermon today that you'll know what you need to do to apply the wisdom that shows up like that. And so James is saying, hey, this is the proof of wisdom, and we want to see this godly wisdom in your life, but there's a tension in our world. There's a tension because there's really two operating systems happening at the same time. And there are two kinds of wisdom that are out there. And I want to talk to you about the place of wisdom. So there's the proof of wisdom and the place. And there are two places. I'm going to tell you the points right now. There's wisdom from above, which is godly wisdom, and then there's wisdom from below. And he compares and contrasts these. This is the thrust of his whole conversation, is that you and I can either lean into the world's wisdom, into man's wisdom, the wisdom from below, or we lean in to the wisdom from above, which is godly wisdom. And you and I roll that tango all the time. And many of us are on two sides, this fence on this decision, this fence on this decision, and we're just balancing this, and it's a hard tightrope to walk. And so notice the place of wisdom. It really is first wisdom from below. And let's see what it is. He says in verse 14, this is what he says. But if, and he explains what this man's wisdom is like. If you have bitter jealousy and selfish ambition in your hearts, do not boast and be false to the truth. So this man's wisdom shows up in two particular ways. It shows up with this bitter jealousy. Bitter jealousy. I love what Curtis Vaughan in his work on the book of James, he says this is a fierce desire to promote one's opinion to the exclusion of others. So he's saying is that listen, the bitter jealous wisdom says I'm the smartest person in the room. Now I'm the only smart person in the room, and everybody has to be subjected to what I say when I say it. That's what he's saying about bitter jealousy. It doesn't matter what anybody else says. I could give a rip about what your opinion is. We got to lean into what I say, and this is man's wisdom. It manifests itself in bitter jealousy, and combined with this bitterness and resentful attitude, it has nothing to do with godly wisdom. Like if godly wisdom is on this side of the street and man's wisdom is on this side, you're over here and you're tucked back into the warehouse or the storefront that's on that street. It comes out in bitter jealousy and secondly in selfish ambition. This is a very unique word. It means the party spirit. It's caution to the wind. It's the party lifestyle. Think prodigal son when he goes out and spends everything he has and forgets about his family. That's man's wisdom. That's what it'll get you. It'll get you stuck in a pig pen of doubt and regret. It's this idea in the Greek culture that a politician would use to drum up support. He'd go door to door, knocking on door. Hey, come support me. I'm going to manipulate my language in order to build a following so that I can have these people, so that I can make it to the Senate. I'm going to manipulate the situation. And that's what selfish ambition does. It's really pictured in the story or the biography of Mussolini. There was a time when a biographer was sitting down to get some research on his life, and she asked him, hey, what's your greatest ambition? And he's pacing the floor, back and forth, and then he answered, I am obsessed by one wild desire. It consumes my whole being. I want to make a mark on my era with my will. And then he says, the biographer says, he did this. I want to make my mark on my era with my will like this. And he took his fingernails and scratched this chair from one end to the other. That's selfish ambition. And man's wisdom is laden with, I want what I want, when I want it, my way or the highway. And it's all about one person. The person that you look at in the mirror every morning when you wake up, and the person I look at in the morning when I wake up. And it's destructive. It's destructive to your family. It's destructive to the church. It's destructive to every human relationship that you could ever have. It's bitter, it's jealous, and it's self-centered. And that's the effects of it. Where's it from? Look at verse 14 again. He says, but if you have bitter jealousy and selfish ambition, notice that three-word phrase. Where is it? In your heart. Do y'all catch that? Like it lives right here. He's talking to Christians, people who've already committed their lives to Christ, and he's saying that you've got that bitter jealousy and that selfish, ambitious spirit, and it's made room in your heart, and it's living rent-free in your soul. and it's thriving there. And it's a dangerous place. When that selfish spirit rises and that jealousy rises in your heart, you're operating, as I have in my life, on the wisdom of the culture, of the era, of the day, wisdom from below. And it's scary because it's right here. And then notice that next phrase. He says, and do not boast and be false to the truth. It's like he's saying, you haven't done it yet? Stop it. That's not what he's saying. He's saying, you're doing it right now. You're already doing this, and you need to knock it off. You got to kill that spirit in you. You've got to stop because, again, it's keeping you on the opposite side of the street that you want to be on. You want to be operating in the wisdom from above and godly wisdom, and this spirit in you, you got to knock it off because it's keeping you concrete, cinder-blocked feet onto that side of the road, and it's busy traffic, and you can't get across. You got to knock that off. And notice in verse 15 what he says next. He says, this is not, all of that effect, this is not the wisdom that comes from above. So if it's not from above, where is it from? Don't leave me up here by myself. Come on. It's from below. Okay, it's from here. That's what he's saying is it's a man-centered wisdom. And he says, but it is three descriptions. It is earthly, unspiritual, and demonic. So where's the place of this man's wisdom from? It's earthly first. It's the opposite of godly. It is focused right here, right now, what I can get on Alexa, what I can get on Siri, what I can get on Google, the latest and greatest self-help book when I walk into Barnes & Noble or your bookstore of choice. It's the first thing I do when I hit a problem, a roadblock in my marriage, a roadblock with my kids, a roadblock at work, and what do? I jump on the internet and I go Google and I say, how do I deal with a strong-willed child? And you go to the first parenting.com article that you can see, give me the first 3 points that I can deal with, and then I'm going to do it. I was reading an article this week that hit my Facebook feed about the power of the 12-year-old. I got one that's about to enter into 12 years old, and I was reading through this article, and some of it was okay, but then it got to the other part, and I was like, this is so pop psychology, Oprah, Dr. Phil theology that just doesn't work. Like, it doesn't work. And that's what he's saying, is he's saying man's wisdom is that. It's the 3 o'clock show that you turn on NBC, CBS, or ABC. It's the thing that, Savannah Guthrie's talking about on the Today Show in the morning, on the latest and greatest thing that's up, and it's earthly, and it doesn't work. He says that it's unspiritual. It's the idea of our animal instincts that kicked in. I got a feeling about this. Have you ever said that? And then you based your decision off of that gut feeling that you had? I'm just going to follow my heart in this. Has anybody ever said that before? Just raise your hand and be honest. Okay, now lovingly receive this correction. Your heart is a liar. And my heart is too. Don't follow your heart. You follow the Holy Spirit, who is on the throne room of your heart. Let him reconstruct that thing. Because your heart is bent towards sin and is bent towards the unspiritual. And if I'm just following my heart in this thing, you're going to end up on a creek in Bangladesh with your head in, it's going to be brutal. So far from where you want to be. And, let me just say this, it lacks any evidence of real spiritual power. Would you rather have your life marked with supernatural power or, that made sense. That's good. I like that. That makes sense. If you're the make sense family, you're going to be really uncomfortable here. But if you want a supernatural, overwhelming, only God could have done that testimony in your life, then I believe not just you're going to love it here, but you're going to love it in a church. And you're going to love it with Jesus. Because following after him, he takes really crazy, backwards, twisted situations, unties that knot, makes it make sense, and uses broken people in a broken world for his glory to get the greatest message ever told, that you can be saved from yourself and set free from the power of your struggles and sin and have new life in Christ. That's beautiful. And that's something that only God could do, and that's supernatural. Thirdly, this is the most stark thing that he says, is that man's wisdom is demonic. Anybody want that characterized by the way you make your decisions? That was a demonic decision. Now, if you're raising a toddler, you've probably said that before. To which I would heartily agree. Amen. Amen. Sometimes it can be tough, right? But what he's saying is that if you're not operating, and I'm not operating under the banner of godly wisdom, if it's not godly, then it's what? It's demonic. If it's not light, it's... So you and I live in a world that loves the gray. Man, our culture is pervasive on the in-between space of there's got to be a letter between A and B. There's something there. There's something between 1 and 2. And we operate in this space of there's freedom to fill in that gap of neutrality. And I'm just here to tell you today that gray space isn't real. If it's light, then it's light. If it's dark, then it's dark. If it's godly wisdom, then it's not demonic wisdom. If it's demonic wisdom, then it's not godly wisdom. And you and I have to get ourselves out of this mess of neutrality and gray that the culture says, run after, and we're all, let's go do it. And we just run that direction. And it's destructive. It's destructive. And if you live in the neutral, can I just tell you, you lay your head in bed at night just like I do when I've done it, and you take a deep breath and say, oh, wow. There's not as much significance in the neutral, is there? So it's either one or the other. It's either godly wisdom or not. And I don't want anything that I do with my family and do with my church family and do with my relationships. I don't want earthly and unspiritual and demonic to characterize anything. Do you? I don't think you actually want that. I don't think anybody in their heart sets out and goes, I think I'm going for earthly, demonic, and unspiritual today. Let's do all of that. Nobody's doing that. But it does happen sometimes. And so James is saying, beware when those things flare up. You know you're the proof of that wisdom. When those things start to flare up in your life, you are living, marching to the rhythm of the beat, of the drum, of the culture, of the man, of the world, of the wisdom from below. So then he says, let's not go after that. Let's go after the wisdom from above. Who's up for that? Okay, let's go after the wisdom from above. You've made your case, James. Let's move on to something else here. So he says it in verse 17. I'm sorry. I got to hit this. When you and I live with that spirit of the world's wisdom, just look at the fallout really quick. We'll hit it. 2 words. Verse 16. For where jealousy and selfish ambition exist, what's going to be there? Disorder and every vile practice. When disorder shows up in your home, in your relationships, in your church, in your business, that is a clear indicator that you are operating in the world's wisdom. Now that shakes parents. It better. It shakes me. When there's disorder in my home, that means I applied something now that God didn't want me to apply. I'm not leading out in godly wisdom. When that happens in a church, when that happens in relationships, that's the fallout. And that phrase, vile practices, let me just say this, evil practices, it means it's so bad you can't run away from it. To which I would imply people get hurt. That's what he's saying. The fallout of that is that people get hurt. When you and I chase that world's wisdom, the thought of the day, people are ultimately going to get hurt. Now, let's get on to verse 17 and get to the wisdom from above. Look at what James says. It's a list here. He says in verse 17, I'm so grateful for this first 3-letter word there. It says, but. You should put a circle, star, highlight, asterisk, whatever you do to draw attention to that. He says, but, that's the hinge that all this door flings wide open on. The wisdom from above is first pure, then peaceable, then gentle, open to reason, full of mercy and and good fruits, impartial and sincere. Now, he says that wisdom from above is first pure. Everybody say first. That means that there's a second and third, right? Yeah, there is. And he's saying that the most important indicator of the wisdom from above is first. It flows from. All things flow from this quality of godly wisdom. It flows from purity. It flows from a wisdom that is untainted, unstained, undefiled. It is antithetical to the world's wisdom. It is the opposite side of the street. There is no strife. There is no selfish ambition. There is no demonic presence. There is no, it's just ho-hum. There is nothing. It is so far as San Diego is from Cape Cod. That's how far it is from earthly wisdom to godly wisdom, from wisdom from below and wisdom from above. And it all flows from a space of purity. Another word would be holy. It's holy. Man, I would love for me to look back onto my life and ministry and leadership with my family and to say, you know what? There was a turning point in my life where I decided that I was going to apply holy wisdom, pure, separate from everything else, set apart as only God would do. It's pure. It's pure. Everything he describes about godly wisdom flows from this overarching quality of purity. Number two, it's peaceable. So it's pure and it's peaceable. It's right out of the text. You can see it yourself there. And what this peaceable means is it's the presence of health and harmony. It's the presence of health and harmony, to which he would imply that in your relationships with people, that strife is coming. If you've never endured strife in a relationship, you just haven't lived long enough. It's going to happen. And what he's saying is that godly wisdom enters into this and brings health. It brings harmony. And what's great about harmony is you might be a bass and she might be a tenor and she might be an alto, but you got to sing your part. But when it all comes together, what does it create? Come on now, do we need to do a choir lesson here? What does it create? Harmony, yeah, when you all sing your parts and come together, there's harmony that are there. So what God is saying is that there's room for your specific individual perspective and my specific individual perspective, and God loves that and honors that, but when peaceable wisdom comes into the room, it leverages your tenor, your bass, your alto, that's your perspective, but we all come together under the banner of Christ, and he's the one we're going after, and there is peaceableness in the room. You tracking with me? He says it's peaceable. Now, let me just tell you this by testimony. Going after peaceability, if you will, being filled with peace, it's not easy. It's not easy. It's not easy to have harmony. It's not easy to exhibit health. Especially if you're a toxic person. If you're bent towards negativity, if you're bent towards, it's hard to go that route. But just know that the Lord wants for your heart, like he wants for mine, harmony and health. That's what he wants for his church. That's what he wants for your relationships. That's what he wants for your family, is harmony and health. And if that's not there, we got to work on that. You with me? That's what he's saying. He goes on in the text and he explains even more that it's gentle. Everybody say gentle. I don't know if that describes your personality. That not necessarily what people think of when they think of Aaron is necessarily gentle. I wish they would, honestly, because of what it means. I wish I would be more gentle, really. It's non-combative. Just because you have an opinion doesn't mean that you have to say it. I get it. You got a perspective. I got a perspective. We all have them. And he's saying that under the banner of peaceable, pure wisdom, just because you think it and you think you've got the wisdom doesn't mean you've got to give it. That comes back to last week. God put a watch over my mouth. Just because I think it doesn't mean I get to say it. It means that I submit my heart and my life and my lips to the Lord. All of it. And he uses this idea of being gentle with wisdom. It's a relational quality, a gentleness, a non-combative, non-abrasiveness. in your relational connections with people. Bob Utley is a professor of hermeneutics. It's the understanding the Bible. That's the most generic way I could explain that. And he said that, I was listening to something he said about this passage, and he calls gentle, this is great, sweet reasonableness. Sweet reasonableness. So our interactions with people are sweet and reasonable. That means you can stand your ground. That means that you can hold to your position, but the disposition of your heart is love and affection for them because they're a follower of Jesus, made in his image. And you're gentle, sweet, and reasonable. Isn't that good? And so our interactions ought to be sweet and sweet reasonableness. He says that godly wisdom is open to reason. Open to reason. It's a willingness to learn and to let the truth win. Because what we should be all staking our claim on is not what necessarily one man says, but what, not this man, but one man, the God of the Bible, Jesus says, and we stake our claim on that, and we let truth win, period. End of the discussion, and it's over. And it's the ability to lean in and learn and to be open to a discussion. I love the story I read this week about Abraham Lincoln. Apparently there was this particular regiment in the military that a politician wanted moved from one location to another. And so Lincoln did a favor, and he wrote to the War Secretary, Stanton, Edwin Stanton, and he wrote to him and said, hey, we need to move this regiment from here to here. That'll be in the best interest of our country, and that was that. But he was just doing a favor for someone. And then Stanton just made this really kind of flippant statement to his team of people, and it got back to Abraham Lincoln, and Stanton said that the president is a fool. I think that's pretty bold. And then this is what Abraham Lincoln said in reply to Stanton. He said, if Stanton said I'm a fool, then I must be, for he is nearly always right. They talked, open to discussion, and the president quickly realized that his decision was a foolish decision and it would have been a serious military mistake for the security of the nation. And he withdrew his order and moved forward. That is open to reason. Are you open to reason in your life? Are you open to the point where even if somebody calls you a fool, that you would go, do you have enough self-awareness to take a step back and to go, you know what, let me see if there's a morsel of truth in that. Submit the story to God and let the truth hit on your heart. Are you open to reason? Godly wisdom is. Doesn't even mean you have to like the person who said it, but can you receive it? Chew up the meat and spit out the bones is what I've always said. You might not like the delivery, but the truth still might be there. Another thing he says is that godly wisdom is full of mercy and good fruits. I thought that was two different ones, but really one is a byproduct of another. One is a byproduct of another. It's full of mercy. This is you and me going all the way back to James chapter 1, that pure religion, or godly religion that is pure and undefiled before God the Father is this, to visit orphans and widows in their affliction and to keep oneself unstained from the world. And now the reality is we've applied that. We have prescribed that, not described that. So we've said that what the religion that is really pure before the Lord that he loves is specific widow ministry and orphan ministry. And so we've prescribed that like a doctor prescribes medicine. And that's really descriptive ministry. It's describing someone who has been afflicted, fallen on difficult times that is no fault of their own. And it's a description of what the Church of Jesus Christ should chase after and go do ministry to folks that have found themselves in a season like this. And so we're moved by their state, by their lot, by their circumstances, and then we lean in and we serve. And we do acts of compassion. We're full of mercy, motivated by compassion to love them. And then what does that produce? It produces good fruit. May this be a testimony of our lives. You can see it. It's obvious. It's genuine and real. He goes on to say that it's impartial. That's what godly wisdom really is it's impartial. It's the idea of being steady. It's I don't take this position when I'm with this crowd, and then I leave that crowd and I go over here, and it's like I never even was that guy over there, and now I'm a totally different person in this crowd, and I take the position in this crowd over here with these people. It's the same conversation from James chapter 2 about prejudice, about discrimination, about playing favorites. He's saying godly wisdom is the level playing field at the foot of the cross, and that you don't show prejudice, you don't show favorites, you don't play favorites, you have no discriminative nature in your heart. The truth is the truth, and that's where our loyalty is, not into a particular person or a particular thing or a particular group of people. Our loyalty is with Jesus and Jesus alone. He is our king, we are his subjects, and we do what he tells us to do, and so we have only one favorite, which is Christ and Christ alone. And then we operate wisdom with everyone else on this level playing field. Your race, your gender, your nationality, your age, wherever you're at in life, it's the same. And for many Americans, that ruins our world. Because I'm not the same. We celebrate individuality. Did you know that at the DNA level of your life and every chromosome, you're the same? Why? Because God wanted you to be subject to his rule and his authority. You're the same. And there is only one greater than you. And it is God. And you are living life yielded, knelt down, face before, forehead to the ground, to the feet of the King. To him. The truly wise man or woman is the one who is truly living surrendered to the King. That's where victory is. Lastly, he says that we're sincere. Godly wisdom is sincere. It's that Greek term used for an actor who would never play the part of a person for personal gain. She would never take a role because it would promote their career. It's sincere, it's genuine. It's where we get our English word hypocrite. That's the negative. The positive side is sincere and genuine. It's the same thing Paul said in Romans chapter 12. Let love be genuine. Same word. Let love be genuine. Abhor what is evil and hold fast to what is good. So let me just ask you, Sunrise. Is this evident in your life? Is this godly wisdom, is the proof of godly wisdom stained in your life? Is it obvious? Is it clear? What if our interactions with one another were more like godly wisdom and maybe less like worldly wisdom? What kind of impact would that have in your home? I think for me in my life, I think the tone of our home would be different. My guess is the tone of your home would be different. What would it be like if we operated within the realm of the wisdom from above, not the wisdom from below, in relationship with one another as a family? With the people you interact with in the lobby and the people you connect with in ministry here at the church, in your small group, and that. What if that was dealt with on the basis of the wisdom from above? You know what I think would happen? I think that the proof that would show up in your life and in mine was that you and I would ooze Jesus. Do not these qualities of godly wisdom echo in your heart, as it does mine, the character quality of the Son of God? Is he not full of purity and peace and gentle and open to reason and full of mercy? Has he not produced excellent fruit in his life? Is he not impartial and unprejudiced? And is he not the most genuine person to ever walk the face of the earth? This is why Solomon said, son, come here. Get wisdom. Get insight. Because this right here will change everything for your life. Get it. And then James says in James 1:5, ask. Ask God for it. And what does he do? He'll give it to you.